Good afternoon, 2019. I'm so happy to have you all in class today. I'm sorry I can't be there with you, but I know that you're going to do a really good job of staying focused and taking care of business so that we're ready to move on tomorrow when I get back. So you guys have your week sheet in front of you, or you should have your week sheet in front of you. If you don't, please get it out. We're going to go ahead and pause the video so that you can have 5 minutes to work on these problems, and then we'll come back in 5 minutes and check our answers. So 5 minutes, you can go ahead and press pause, and we'll check our work in 5. Okay, so we're going to go through these one at a time to check our work. Just make sure that as we go, if I'm going too fast at any point, it's okay to pause the video and make sure that everyone in the class understands. I'm expecting you guys to help each other out, so make sure you're using that number line when you're checking your work. So let's go through them. The first one, negative 14 plus 8, you should have had negative 6 as your answer. So remember, use that number line. We're at a negative, we add 8, we move to the right, and we end at negative 6. Negative 3 plus negative 5 gives you negative 8. 7 minus 21 gives you negative 14. 5 minus negative 1 gives you positive 6. Remember, 2 negatives cancel out to become a positive. Negative 49 divided by 7, a negative divided by a positive gives you a negative, so that's negative 7. And the last one, negative 8 times negative 3 should give you positive 24. Again, a negative times a negative is going to cancel each other out. Okay. All right, so we're going to transition. Here's what I need. You're going to put away your week sheet, make sure it goes into a safe place. You're also going to get out your math notebook, and in your math notebook, you're going to add the following title to your table of contents. So you're going to write in fraction operations, and I'm going to go ahead and have your teammates pause me while you guys get that written in your notebook, and then when you're ready to start your notes, you'll go ahead and pick me back up. Go ahead. Okay, so now that you have that heading written in your notes, we're going to go ahead and review some fraction operations today so that we're ready to practice these tomorrow when I get back. So starting out, adding and subtracting. Remember that when you have fractions and you're adding and subtracting, these are the ones that require you to have a common denominator. So I need you to copy this into your notes along with this example. And again, I'm going to have your teammate pause me so you can copy this down. And now that we have that copied, what we're going to do is go ahead and try this example together. You should be writing this in your notes so that you have an example to look back to. So we want to find common denominators between this 3 and this 5. And if you're ever confused about finding a common denominator, remember that one thing you're looking for is a multiple they have in common. So both 3 and 5 have a common multiple of 15. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite these two fractions with the denominator being 15. And pardon my handwriting, it's kind of sloppy on here, but I know you guys will forgive me because you're so sweet. So I changed my denominators to 15. Now, when I change this 3 to a 15, I have to change the numerator as well, because I still want this whole thing to represent 2/3 of 15. So the way I do that is I say, okay, to go from 3 to 15, I multiplied by 5, right? Because 3 times 5 is 15. So then I need to do the same thing with the 2. I'm going to say, okay, 2 times 5 gives me 10. So that's my new numerator. And I do the same thing with the second fraction. So to go from 5 to 15, I multiplied by 3. So to go from 4, I need to multiply by 3. And when I do that, I get 12. And now I'm ready to add my numerator. So 10 plus 12 is going to give me 22 over 15 plus 15. Anyone say 30? It's not 30. Be careful. I'll try to catch you. It is 15. Oops, sorry. Started to write 30. Because remember that your common denominator is going to stay the same. So this is 22/15. So imagine I have 15, something's broken into 15 pieces. I have 22 of them. So then I need to turn that back into a mixed number. So 22 one time. And when I do that, I took out 15 of those 22 pieces, so now I have 7 left over. So 1 and 7 15ths is my answer. Okay, so again, make sure you have this written in your notes. If you need to pause me, you can. And if not, we're going to go ahead and move forward. So these are two practice problems of what I want you to look at when you're adding fractions. I'm going to have you go ahead and pause me. I want you in your partner groups at your tables. Please do not get out of your seats and move around, but at your tables, you're going to add these fractions. Actually, add the first one, subtract the second one, and then after you had a chance to work through them with your partner, we'll check our work. So go ahead and press pause. All right, so let's see how we did with these. Common denominators between 8 and 12 and 3 and 36. 12 and 36 have a common denominator of 36. So I actually only need to change the first fraction here because 12 times 3 is 36. Oh, sloppy handwriting. So if 12 times 3 is going to give me 36, then I can do 8 times 3 to give me 24. Good. I knew someone said it. So I have 24 over 36. This one is already with that common denominator, so I don't need to change anything. I can just go ahead and add it. So 24 plus 3 is going to give me 27 over 36. And then I just want to simplify this. And in this one, there's not, because 27 and 36, I can't divide that by a common number. So my answer here is going to be 27 over 36, and that's all you need to do with that. Okay? Let's take a look at the second one. 2/5 minus 1/7. Hopefully you found common denominators of 35, because 5 times 7 is 35, and that is the lowest common multiple they have in common. Because I had to change both denominators, I'm going to write both fractions over. So 5, I had to multiply by 7 to get to 35. So I'm going to multiply 2 by 7 to get to 14. Good. And then I do the same thing with my second fraction. 7 times 5 was 35. So 1 times 5 is 5. And now I'm ready to subtract. So 14 minus 5 is going to give me 9 over 35. And again, this is not a fraction that I can simplify, so that is my final answer. 9/35 is my final answer there. Okay? So let's go ahead and shift into multiplying. So again, I'm going to have your teammate pause me. I want you to copy down this definition for multiplying fractions, and then we'll talk about the example. So I'm going to go ahead and have someone press pause. Okay, so when you multiply fractions, you do not need common denominators. Instead, we're just going to remember that we multiply across. So another way to say that is top times top, bottom times bottom. And the only thing you have to remember is that when you have a whole numbers are actually numbers written over 1. So if you have a whole number, turn it into a fraction before you start. So we have this example here, 3/6 and 2/4. Now, I'm going to tell you that a tip is to simplify your fractions before you start. And what that'll do is save you from having to simplify at the end of your multiplication. So 3/6, to simplify that, I'm going to say, is there a number that I can divide both 3 and 6 by? And there is. I can divide them both by 3. So what I'm going to do is rewrite this fraction, simplify. So I'm going to say, okay, 3 divided by 3 is 1. And 6 divided by 3 is 2. So hopefully we see 3/6 is the same as 1/2. This is just the simplified version. And then I'm going to multiply that by the second fraction. But what I notice is that I can also simplify 2/4. So again, 2 can be divided by 2 to become 1. And 4 can be divided by 2 to become 2. So actually, both of these fractions, both 3/6 and 2/4, are represented by 1/2. And now I only have to multiply the 1/2s together. So 1 times 1 becomes 1 over 2 times 2 is 4. And so my answer is 1/4. That's already simplified. You could double check this by turning it into decimals and checking your answer, right? So 0.5 times 0.5 would equal 0.25. And so that's kind of how you can think through and check your work. So let's go ahead and try these multiplication problems with your partners. I want you to multiply both sets. Remember, before you multiply, see if you can simplify your fractions. That's going to save you some time at the end and also make it so you don't have to work with such big numbers. So go ahead and simplify and then multiply, and then we'll check our answers in just a moment. All right, so let's see how we did here. We had 3/9. That simplifies to 1/3 because 3 and 9 can both be divided by 3. And then 1/18 is already simplified, so it's going to be times 1/18. Kind of hard writing with this thing. All right, so now we're ready to do top times top, bottom times bottom. 1 times 1 is 1, good. And 3 times 18. So if that one's difficult for you, break it down. Do 3 groups of 8, which is 24, and then 3 groups of 10, which is 30. 30 and 24 is 56. So my answer here is 1/56. Do the same thing for the second one. In the second problem, I can't simplify either of these fractions, so all I have to do is top times top, bottom times bottom. So 1 times 2 is 2, and 6 times 3 is 18. And what you'll notice in this problem is that even though I couldn't simplify in the beginning, I can simplify now, right? So 2 and 18, I can divide both of those by 2. So 2 divided by 2 becomes 1. And 18 divided by 2 is 9, good. And so my answer here is 1/9. Okay. All right. Last piece, dividing fractions. Go ahead and write this definition in your notes. This is your last part of your notes along with the example. Pause me and we'll check it in a moment. All right, so dividing fractions. What we're going to remember when we're dividing fractions is that you get the same result whether you're dividing a fraction or multiplying by the reciprocal of the fraction. And I know some of you learned that word last year, but in case you didn't, here's what we need to remember. That word reciprocal means the flipped fraction. So I want you to underline it in your notes and write flipped fraction. And then we're going to look at an example of it. Okay? So what that means is I'm going to take my fractions down here. The first fraction, 3/6, I'm going to keep the same. I'm just going to simplify it. So I'm going to take 3/6, and just like we did in the multiplying problem, I'm going to simplify it to 1/2. Because I'm going to do that whether I'm multiplying or dividing. Okay? Now, dividing fractions, I said, is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. So instead of dividing, I'm now going to multiply. So I'm going to change that to a multiplication symbol. And then that 2/4, first I'm going to simplify it. So 2/4 we said is 1/2. But then I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. And remember, reciprocal means flipped fraction. So instead of multiplying by 1/2, I'm going to multiply by 2/1. And so hopefully you see how that's the flip of the fraction we started with, right? Instead of 1/2, it's 2/1. And now we just follow the rules for multiplying. So 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 1 is 2. Simplify, and that becomes 1. And that should make sense because if we think about the original problem, it was 1/2 divided by 1/2. Well, 1/2 can only go into itself one time, so that should make sense. Here's your last set of problems. Go ahead and try these with your partner. All right, so let's quickly go through these. We have 2/5 cannot be simplified. So we're going to multiply it by the reciprocal, which instead of 1/8 becomes 8/1. And that's going to give us 16/5. which we're then going to turn into a mixed number, and that becomes